Welcome to another installment of Behind Greatness by Inspire. Luciano here is your host, speaking as usual. Today we have another guest from across the ocean. He's joining us from his home in Spain, in the general vicinity of a large country, Spain, yes?
Yes.
His name is Alex Gomez-Marin. Before I ask you to introduce yourself, Alex, you just said to me before the recording, in response to my question, are you ready? And you said, I'm always in, always all in. Why?
There's no time to lose. Beautiful things going on. Some other things are darker. It's all, I feel I inhabit a world, both personally and professionally, where everything is so intensely important, interesting, and urgent. So I'm all in. There's no question you cannot ask me, and
Okay.
yeah, I don't need a script. I'm really here for the true exchange to the degree that it may happen.
Amazing. Okay, so how would you introduce yourself if you're given 10 seconds?
Oh, PhD in theoretical. No, I'm a dad and a husband and a seeker who happens to be a scientist, and that's what I do. I'm trying to investigate what is impossible and yet happens.
Ah, right. A page out of Jeff Kripal's book too.
Kripal and Carlos Eiras, They Flew. Both are huge inspirations for me from the humanities about the impossible, yes.
That's where we share something as well. So we look highly upon his Jeff Kripal's thoughts that he's shared with the world. And he's been on the podcast and it's been lots and lots of fun. What is the evidence of the afterlife that you've seen, studied, researched, believe in, whatever, throw it all in? Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
All right. And I always do it with preliminaries because it's important. Evidence. Let's agree, not define, but maybe agree what we mean by evidence, because I know it now when I tell it to people. Again, my materialist friends freak out. Evidence. Let me tell you, evidence in science, because evidence in normal life sounds like what the word says, at least in Spanish, evidente, no big deal, it's obvious, it's trivial, it's evident, right? And evident conveys the sense of course, no doubt, that's what it is, it's evident. But in science, evidence never means that, whether we talk about ghosts or electrons. Evidence means you go and do an experiment, which is a very interesting performative act upon nature, and then you get some sort of results that then you interpret, and they think of it as a compass. Then they point towards a direction that says, well, what you're asking may go that way and not so much that way. So, yeah, I never express it like this, but let's think of science as a navigation problem, right? So it's not like I finally made it to the place I know. It's like, all right, this seems to be more eastward than westward. Okay, so that's what evidence is. Evidence is less of a mathematical theorem where if you agree on the premise and follow all the steps and they're logically correct, you are forced to believe the conclusion. That's not what it's meant by evidence in science ever. You're never kind of forced to believe an absolute definite conclusion. Evidence is more like you go to you're in front of a lawyer and in front of a jury, and then you're presenting your evidence, right? You say, I bring these photos of the crime scene and I bring these pictures and these recordings. Okay, so that's evidence now. Now that I've said why, because I will start going through the evidence that I found, that I've read, that I've investigated, that's out there for suggesting that something of us survives bodily death, right? That's the claim, that's the hypothesis, that's what we want to find out. And there are lots of different kinds of evidence. One, and you can double click there again, are near-death experiences in many forms. We can talk about that. Another one in this constellation, as if that was like a group of stars or islands, there are death-related phenomena that are not near-death experiences that are very interesting too. like terminal lucidity, or like shared death experiences, or like took them. I mean, I've studied them a lot, and I've actually just written a book in Spanish about them, so that I'm promoting it, but it's like really fresh in my mind and in actual paper. The ink is really fresh. So this is the constellation of death-related phenomena. Why are they important? It's not just because it's near death and it's gloomy and it's mysterious and it's about death, which is an ultimate question all mortals share. It's because they speak about our consciousness detaching from the brain somehow, if I can say metaphorically. They speak about mind being more than the activity of brain cells, right? But then there are other islands, other archipelagos or other constellations, not just when or while or right after you're dying or you died, but there's the whole issue of mediumship, which is very taboo. It's like, oh, please don't talk about mediumship. Well, for more than a century, even Nobel laureates just engage in this kind of research, visiting good mediums. And then people say, oh, but this is all fraud. It's like, no, there's fraud everywhere, even amongst politicians, for instance, or bakers, right? So mediumship is another chunk of, which is basically about contact with other entities, right? So that'll be another huge set of islands. And there are books written about it and scientific papers written about them. Of course, you won't read them published in Science and Nature because that's the glamorous top end of the orthodoxy. So of course they won't be there. Then there's a third archipelago. So when you die, when you're dead, and then maybe when you come back. So this is the group of studies about children who remember previous lives, carried out mainly by Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker and great scientists at the University of Virginia. And they went and they did these field studies. Of course, they don't have like a ghost meter, but they can do what psychologists and anthropologists would do. And they ask these very young kids, 3, 4, 5 years old, that before the internet existed, they knew so much about alleged previous lives, like details that are so overwhelming that when you come to the jury with the evidence and then the skeptic says, this is impossible. It's like, well, dude, now it's your turn to come up with the burden of proof beyond reasonable doubt is on your freaking side. Okay. So these are the three, I call these the three stations, right? Crossing the threshold once you've crossed it, supposedly, and when you come back. But then there's a fourth one. So that's what I call these the 4 stations of survival of consciousness. And the fourth station gathers the many very impossible to bring back our beloved Jeff Kripal and others, impossible experiences that we have in our everyday life. So I say you don't need to nearly die to experience the impossible. What are those? A huge taxonomy there. Precognitive dreams.
Yeah. Sure.
Lucid dreams that have sometimes an intersubjective aspect. How to explain that? Extrasensory perception in different forms, like remote viewing and others, right? Mind to matter interactions. Anomalous healing. I mean, the list is so long. So all of this is important because it's telling us that minds go beyond matter sometimes. Most of the time, they're in great solidarity, but sometimes, like Velcro, weird things can happen. And you should all like to know what's going on and investigate. So that's what I'm trying to. Sorry for the long rambling, but this is the landscape. This is the landscape of where I think current neuroscience and hopefully physics can make huge progress in science.
I'm gonna attach some importance to what you just said. Why should we all like to know? You just said that. Why should we all like to know? Because some people would say that that's an arrogant thing to say. Some people would say, well, don't, like, I got to put food on my table. Like, I don't need to know.
Totally. It's true. It's not obliging, but I would say, maybe I would rephrase by saying, most likely you want to know because these things happen to you. So my democratic way of saying it is, look, look, I used to be a physicist, right? I still have the license, but and we go on like these or outreach people, and they speak the wonders about general relativity and light bending, or like neutrinos and virtual particles, like anything about the natural world you want to convey scientifically. It's just a fantastic trip. But who cares about neutrinos? What we really care is, where is grandma gone after she died?
Sure.
Right? Or why did I just think of that person and she calls me? Or why I have been obsessed with number 137 and I saw it today 4 times. Does that mean anything about me? Right? And it's more than curiosity. It's more like awe and wonder coupled with trauma and suffering of also not so great things that happen. So I would claim then that we all would like to know what's going on with these things.
Yeah, Kevin Knuth he was a physicist, is, and he's been on the show. And yeah, he said something very poignant, that very, very similar to what you just said. He says, why is there not nothing?
Yeah.
So there's a lot here that I want to ask you. But one question is, do you know of the term contact modalities?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Okay. By Ray Hernandez coined this.
Are we going to talk about aliens now?
No,
I forgot to mention them when I was going through my... Look, can we rewind? I was going through my...
That's hilarious.
I told you, I'm all in, and just you pull the brakes. Look, I spoke about the four las 4 estaciones, I call it, right? The 4 seasons. But this is human-centric. Human-centric.
Yeah,
we when we live, we when we die, we when we're maybe on the other side, da-da-da-da-da. But I'm also very concerned, interested, fascinated by anomalous minds, extended minds, alien minds, artificial minds. So the question is even bigger than us. It's not just what happens to us humans, but what about other animals and their consciousnesses, maybe even plants. The third kingdom is fungi, and maybe there are other intelligences that are out there, be it alien in the literal sense of the word, alien, right? So, yeah, that makes the scope even bigger.
Yeah, let's turn that on its head. Maybe Joe McMoneagle said this to me, and I thought about this for a while. I still think about it. Maybe human beings, Homo sapiens, maybe we're the aliens. Maybe we're the ones who are plopped into a world that we're trying to make sense of, so we make us the center of it and make everything else lesser or a mystery to fluff off or whatever. We were speaking to Paco Calvo. Where is he? University of Murcia, I think?
Yeah, Murcia.
Yeah, Murcia. And just so he's a specialist in, I'm going to say plant consciousness, but much more than that. And we talked about language as an inhibitor, and how the language of plants is something that's also unseen, unheard, misunderstood. And we impose our language of study, our verbal language, and that in and of itself limits our understanding of what's going on, our own language.
Yeah.
The fact that we speak one. So like going back to your 4 stations, right? So your NDEs, your OBs, your the dreams, your precognitive dreams, and so forth. That's so, it's put very lovingly, because we should be curious about it, because that's human experience. And I think that
more than curious.
Well, the most inhuman thing we do is to ignore that those are human experiences, I think.
Yes. And it makes sense on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm quite pissed about it. And so that's my activist side. It's like, stop telling people, look, Luciano, that's a great deal of the reason why I'm doing this. I'm doing it because I'm not doing it for the world. It's not like arrogant altruism here. I'm doing it because I'm truly fascinated by it. But the second reason is I'm sick of people being told they're stupid or they're crazy or they're alone because they experience those things. I'm sick of the scientists saying, how full of you. Like the kind of Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world this is true, whether you like it or not. Science says so. Like, you don't have a fucking idea what you're talking about most of the time because you didn't even study the evidence because that doesn't fit in your worldview. But then you're telling my grandmother that she's stupid, but we'll condone her because she's old, because she saw her deceased loved one 4 times in the kitchen over the last week, right? And we say, come on, get on with it. That's so. This really pisses me off. And now that I'm saying it lovingly, but vehemently, I receive so many emails and messages. And this is not about followers, for God's sake. I'm just receiving these lovely stories from many different kinds of people, from any kind of people to nurses to even university professors saying, thank you for speaking out about this because this happened to me and this so I'm now collecting all of that and putting them in that taxonomy. And so that's super important, and that we do with science the opposite of what's been typically done, which is inhibit those, not those experiences, but inhibiting the power they have in human life by marginalizing them.
You mentioned in your bio, I didn't want to read it, so I want to play with it a little bit. You mentioned in your bio that you're the director of the Pari Center, or Pari Center in Tuscany, Italy. What is this center? I've heard it before.
They're news. I'm not anymore, but that's fine.
That's an old bio.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you see, many things happen, and so I suppose I would need to update those descriptions. But yes, the Pari Center is a beautiful place in the middle of a very small village in Tuscany. And 25 years ago, David Pitt, the late David Pitt, a physicist who was a friend of David Bohm and also a scientific colleague of his and his biographer, by the way, started having dinners and lunches at his house and just inviting people from hardcore quantum physics, but also beyond, including, the humanities and religions. And so the arts and the sacred became part of that truly transdisciplinary exchange. And he did that for many years until he died in 2017, I believe. And then the center continued, also despite the pandemic, having online events and in-person events. It's kind of an intellectual spa, you could call it. Also sometimes an emotional one, where we try to do, or at least when I was there, I'm not there anymore, do what universities should and don't do anymore.
Which is?
Which is universitas, right? Universitas, like bring together people from very different disciplines and think about the biggest questions and talk about them and teach them and learn and inquire about reality rigorously, but also with a very open mind.
Okay, so maybe an offshoot here. I'm a parent, and I'm always concerned about my kids and their future and their well-being. So I am fully immersed in the world of 3D, right? So our material world, because quite frankly, we need to be in order to survive, and then maybe our ideas to spread. I don't know, but I want my kids to have a path that they can forge that would help them explore more. So in universities, we have kids who have concerned parents who are sending them there, because now universities, at least from this side of the pond, are becoming more and more expensive. And so kids are more directed by their parents, I think, than in previous generations. And you see there's an anxiety. They want a job. Their university to have a job or forge a career. More, I think, than in the past. But I don't know. I'm not as part of that world as you are. What are your thoughts there?
Well, my daughters are very young still. If we can speak about schools and then universities, I have my doubts whether having them go to school is a good idea. I'm not sure they learn much. And I can detect, despite their school being one that we appreciate and like, and that's why we bring them there, I appreciate some sort of indoctrination that I don't like at all. And it's not a fault of the teachers. I think it comes from the government or maybe culture. So that's for schools. Universities, I hate to say, because I work in one, are a great invention, but they have become kind of a scam because, well, they say go to university and get a degree and get a job. Maybe people who get jobs without degrees, actually some of the really important jobs, like knowing how to make furniture or grow your own food, or mend something with your own hands, be it electricity or you don't learn after 4 years. And also in the United States, at least, not in Spain, they're terribly expensive, you know that. And so there's this whole system of people getting into huge debt, and then they need to pay by committing the most valuable, maybe productive years of their lives into jobs they may not like. Anyways, I don't want to bitch about universities, but given what they could be and what they are, this is a very important institution. I think we need institution, but it's a very important institution that it's failing us. And if we now speak about the academic side of universities, because universities are, of course, to teach and train higher education, but when it comes to research, it's similarly dark, because you need to publish papers within another scam, which is the publishing business, and then universities and taxpayers pay for that kind of super expensive fees, and that's what serves people to promote. So, look, I'm a happy man. I don't want to be preaching bad news or even good news, but I try to say things as they are, and we need to rescue universities, but I'm not sure we can do it.
I think, I believe that places of higher learning, just as well as high schools and elementary schools, should have an element of philosophical questioning in their subject material. I think it can start. It's not difficult, but I think it should start there, because asking the why, like a child would ask why, almost incessantly, is, I think, more useful now than before. And I say this only because you used the word urgent a few minutes ago. And for some reason, I got anxious when you said urgent, because I want to go back. I feel that there is a sense of urgency. Me personally and professionally, there's a sense of urgency for people to question more, and not just do, but question more. Example, and then I want you to give me your thoughts. Example, speaking to a 20-year-old. This is, I don't know, last year, and he asked me, can we use ChatGPT for some idea creation? I said no. He goes, well, why not? So, well, why would you? He goes, well, it's more efficient. So he was equating creating ideas as something that he could make more efficient rather than thoughtful. Mm-hmm. That scared me. Like, when you say the word urgent, for me, there's a sense of urgency in combating this, I think. Thoughts?
Well,
go for it.
They learn from us. I mean, we are old enough, right? When we say, oh, young people, we sound like old people. Maybe we are a little bit. First, they learn from us. So it is us who've been pursuing these ghosts, being very efficient and other things. And they imitate that. As you can tell, I'm sure, with your own kids. They imitate you, and you look yourself, oh, wow, this is mirroring my good and my not so good parts.
Also scary.
The second thing I would say about that is that I hope these new generations give less of an F about the older ones very soon, because they may have the creative potential to, I'm not sure if it's fixing or creating new things. So I wouldn't engage in a narrative when they say, oh, poor young generations. I think we, older and oldest generations, should step to the side a little bit. And I'm also speaking for those who have preceded us, because, look, let me put it in another way. I now think a lot about my granddaughters, and I don't have any because my daughters are younger than 10 years old. But some of the things that I do now, I do them with that horizon in mind. And it gives me more courage, but also a sense of not hopelessness, but vulnerability, because we won't really see the fruits of our actions, even if we do things well.
Is that really the case, that you won't see it? I mean, you physically won't see it, but aren't you your daughters?
I hope I'm not. I hope there's something. I hope there's something that can reach this process of not just independence and autonomy, but individuation. And look, I mean, we're jumping all over the place. I'm sorry, I'm like this, but when now I think back at so many patterns we inherit from our parents, and it's so hard to break free from them. Being grateful, but you say thank you. That's not me. So I hope I'm not projecting that on them. And not just our parents, our biological parents, but our cultural parents. Like when I think about science and where we are and where we're going and where we want to go, I think about my grandparents like Galileo and Francis Bacon. And I think, well, what did they do for us? And also what can we now take and honor as a legacy and also do differently? So it's a huge question of legacy.
Well, you threw something out. So on that, let's stay on that string. You threw something out in a talk that you gave, I think it was last year. You can correct me if you like. You said, quote unquote, materialism should have died in the 90s.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, they covered the crime scene with the hard problem of consciousness. I mean, we can approach this philosophically, or we can do it from the neuroscience of consciousness of today, or I could do it more historically. Maybe a way of doing it historically would be as follows. I often feel I'm in a sort of video game. And by the way, I don't want to say, oh, reality is an illusion. That's another thing I don't like engaging with, because I think that when I put my daughters to bed, they are the most real thing I ever experienced. And I don't think, oh, my sensory apparatus is an interface of a reality I could never. Come on, I'm more like Goethe here, like the appearance is the reality. Of course, there are things we don't see. Anyways, going back to materialism, which is the dead horse I enjoy kicking, right? Because it's so wrong, and it's so pathetically pernicious, and it's so pervasive. It's an ism. There are many isms, like this video game I was talking about. I realized that when I was educated as a kid and then as a scientist, implicitly I was being transfused with this sort of mental parasite, which was materialism. Like the idea that everything is made of matter and nothing else. Everything that's really real, it's matter in movement. But then I happen to be a scientist, so when you and not only that, a physicist, and when you ask what's matter, well, it's not what most people think when we say matter, like billiard balls, right? That's the 19th view version of that. So that's one big ism that's entangled with many others. So now I describe materialism within a great plot, like many layers of an onion that I'm trying to burst through. So there's materialism and there's this unholy trinity of materialism, reductionism, and mechanicism. We can talk about them, really ingrained in science, to the degree that some people, both professional scientists and lay people, believe that if you're a good scientist, you must be a materialist. It's like, come on, it's time to kill that meme and that myth. But then there are others like literalism, that things are either true factually or they're sort of fictions, right? So this is another ism that I've been struggling and enjoying. There are others, positivism, what they pretended, some philosophers pretended during the previous century, that actually you can be metaphysically free. And what they wanted is to inject materialism again, pretending that there was no philosophical choice. And there are more isms here. So I think Western culture has great treasures, but they're all trapped in these bubbles of isms. And until we don't break free from them, I don't think we can do truly creative, beautiful work, both in the sciences and in the humanities.
Well, Stefan Schwartz, who I think you know, or at least know of, I think you've written about him too. We had him in a 2-part series in this podcast, and he's a scientist, he's a researcher, and one of the things that he told us, he said, materialism is good, materialism is real, but it's not enough. Again, you said at the beginning of this that you're a seeker for things that you don't see. What don't you see that you want to see?
Again, your questions bring to mind that those books I used to read when I was a kid. I don't know if you have them in your country, but it's these books where you could choose your own adventure. Yeah. Remember them?
Indiana Jones, that was my favorite.
There was one where you can, if now you want to go into the submarine, go to page 74. But if you prefer to stay on the surface and sail to the pirate island, go to page 23. Yes. So we could I'm offering you, because we could go the more esoteric, hardcore, kind of edges of consciousness, crazy shit way about the invisible, or I could go like the more modest, and it's like, and ask you, or ask those who think everything is made of matter, if they've ever seen an electron, right? An electron. Have you ever seen an electron? No, because physics, even the most beautifully orthodox physics, is also the art of making visible what's invisible. But for some reason, now I sense in me the activist. For some reason, if you speak about 13 dimensions in a mathematical space, nobody understands, and you ask for billions to build a larger hadron collider, everybody claps. Or if you see on the news, now that I'm often on the news, I can see that, like, if you appear as a physicist and say, I'm this theoretical physicist and I know that free will is an illusion because that, and you start pontificating philosophically about life, the universe, and everything based on 4 equations, people go like, it's very interesting. Now, if you come instead from the other side, which I also explore, neuroscience, mind, and consciousness, and you say, there's scientific evidence, not irrefutable proof, but evidence of an afterlife, they go like, what the F you're talking about? If you say, well, yeah, there are things that are intangible that seem to have some sort of causal effect on our world, and we can try to study them. Wouldn't that be very interesting? And then people freak out. So you see, there's a sort of weird conflict of interests when it comes to what invisible thing we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you can go from the electron to ghosts to something that sounds romantic but is equally profound. Love. Is love visible? Or another one, I'll offer another one and hand it back to you. The laws of physics. Where are the laws of physics? They're written somewhere in some sort of cosmic software or engraved in a stone. Like, where are mathematical objects? They're also invisible, right? So come on, let's get over with it. I mean, we are surrounded by invisible things that are very real.
So let's talk about you.
All right.
So you said something that was pretty cool, because you were mentioning how you were becoming more public, and you spoke at the Science of Consciousness. Is that right? Symposium in Barcelona earlier this year.
Yes.
One of our regular guests, actually, side note, Rudy Shield, who he was an astronomer, astrophysicist at Harvard for, I don't know, a few decades. He told us about it. He was invited, but he's now in his mid-80s, so traveling is a little bit more challenging for him. So he told us about it. We looked into it, and then I met you, and you told me that you were speaking at it. But you said sometimes, this is about your personal experience, you said sometimes the intimate comes through the public, and this is a treasure. Elaborate a little bit here for the listener.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
And that's quite good.
I mean, I wrote it, so it must be true.
Yes. No, it's poetically expressed. I'm not sure I said it like that, but sure, there's some things that are, well, consciousness itself, like subjective experience is the most intimate thing we have, right? Feeling of being you, depending how you want to define it, right? And yet we have this urge, this lovely urge to share it, right? To make it intersubjective. So that's on the one hand the problem, the challenge, the good problem that the science of consciousness has. But then if you go to the edges of consciousness, what I call the edges, not just human experience, not just how these coffee fields or the typical, prototypical examples, but the weird stuff, but that's maybe the extraordinary stuff that it's actually very common. These experiences are terribly intimate, powerful, and at the same time, if we find ways of sharing them, they are... When this thing that's intimate becomes public in a small circle, right? Because it's not just about venting your own miseries, and there are things you should never share because these are your treasures. But well, you said let's talk about me. The moment I start sharing my own near-death experience, I realized, wow, the echo that's coming, it's just so uplifting. Again, not uplifting it or reinforcing my biases. Like I'm learning so much from the real world now, from the real things that happen to real people, not like mice in a laboratory and then saying that's how the human mind works.
Right. And for the listener, you have worked on mice and fruit flies for several years in the laboratory. So yes, you have that experience.
Yes, also. And I used to dream I was a fruit fly when I was studying fruit fly larvae orienting in a banana landscape. So I try to empathize also with my laboratory animals. Well, not so much with mice, but I it's the Umwelt, it's called in German. It's this idea of the subjective world from the perspective of the subject you're trying to understand, be it a fruit fly or a human after a near-death experience.
Well, that's the experience of a performative artist, right? Because you were also a guitar player. So I'm sure you had early life experiences in that, especially.
So many things, because I often feel like the guy walking on the tightrope in the circus, you know? And then on the one hand, while I'm juggling, on the one hand, I have the kind of the fanatics of the no, like this is bullshit, this is nonsense, this is pseudoscience. But then on the other side, I have to deal with the fanatics of the yes, this is for real, and this everything you wish will happen. So I'm navigating through poo-poo and woo-woo at the same time. And so I do feel I'm sort of an artist, I don't know what I am, like this kind of weird physicist who wanted to be a philosopher and now ended up being a neuroscientist and now who knows what. And I'm willing to play all those roles. I'm all in again. I'm all in.
Okay, well, let's then go back to you being a guitar player. You played in a band for a while, for I gather several years, and you played gigs frequently throughout the week in several places when you were young. That has to inform a certain part of your curiosity landscape for the rest of your life.
I've never thought about that. I enjoyed it when I did it. I enjoyed very much practicing too, like late night practicing during the week with my band and improvising and being there with, feeling the sound on your body, which is something that now maybe we've lost. And I loved the gigs too. We recorded a record even, but I never thought about the influence of that in my life. Tell me more about it. How do you think it influenced me?
You said just feeling the sound. Like you can't see the sound. You know it exists and you feel it. And you know that that's real because you feel it. And so that changes your view upon it. And maybe it gives you more motivation, more inspiration, makes you want to connect more with the people around you. I don't know. I'm making these assumptions.
Now that I'm thinking about it, there's another aspect of playing live that's a really good observation, because now that I'm talking to you, or when I talk to people, or even when I go on stage, maybe what I'm doing is some sort of a live improv, but rather than using guitar strings, I'm using ideas. Because I feel like that. I feel like when I'm talking to somebody, it's like as if I'm playing with somebody and I'm craving for that new thing to happen. Like in conversations I've had when I'm the host, because I've also been on the other side, I never thought of them as interviews. I was the host nevertheless. And my main goal was double. One is to make the other person shine as much as possible, like their ideas shine, like be able to re-express them or be a mirror so that they may even be surprised as what they had thought before. And the second thing I always kind of even prayed for or craved for was that there's a moment of true creativity where something more than both of us would suddenly appear in the scene. And that is literally what I expected when I was playing music. It's like, wow, did you see what just happened now? So you're very right.
The ideas are your musical instrument, I guess, like to use that a loose metaphor on stage. But I think, seeing, listening to you say that, but watching you say it and listening to your tone, maybe the passion that you have is more like the sound of the music you used to play. Like the passion is the vibration that people feel.
I'm loving this analogy, Luciano. I never thought of it because now I think about more aspects of it. Another one is, I used to play with, I don't want to talk about my music, but I used to play electric guitar with lots of effects. And so I would spend a lot of time with, echo and wah and reverb and phaser and shit like that. And then playing with tone and volume. And when I speak, I also realize that I enjoy changing tone. So that's why I could be, this happened recently in a podcast here in Spain where I was talking about my hospital experience and I was describing like the really ugly, disgusting fluids that were coming out of my body. And then I suddenly make a joke about that's like the lava that you would see in Mordor. And that was apparently so funny that the technician started laughing. And so I just stop and turn around and say, why are you laughing? And I realized that's so great that I can bring in, but I'm not doing it, again, I'm not doing it just performatively. I'm doing it truly. But it felt so great, like in a song where you can just bring some drama and then all of a sudden you're making a joke. And now we're back talking about William James's idea about the permissive brain all in one go. Very similarly to the music, tone and reverb and all of those effects. Yeah.
Have you ever had an out-of-body experience?
I've had kind of lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis, and then weird things like that. I wish I wish I would have had one of these seeing me from above, but I haven't. No, I haven't.
If you're interested, I want to put you in touch with he's a psychologist. He used to be, I think, a practicing psychologist, has many clinics around the world, lives in North Carolina. And he's got a protocol that he has been designing for several years for out-of-body experiences. And he started to learn it. He told me, he gave the story, it's on the podcast, but he started to learn it from the grandson of Gandhi, who taught him how to do it.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
Very cool. Yeah,
Let me say one more thing about the music, because now the music analogy is just surfing in my brain. Thank you for your inception of it. Another thing that happened to me, Luciano, that's so telling about my imposter syndrome and my not caring, changing roles, and now, studying things that only a psychiatrist should do, and then talking to a mystic, and then going back to theoretical physics. I always, despite enjoying guitar, I always wanted to be a drummer. And so I would constantly just bother my friend David, the drummer, and before rehearsing and after, please, can I sit on your drums? And at some point he said, no, you cannot sit in my drums anymore. So I realized, and I also wanted to sing, and there were two singers, and I would have been the third one. So they said, no, you're not singing. So this, multidisciplinary drive that I have, I've also felt it in music. It's like, I would have loved to play all the instruments. I would go to a concert. I remember that. And then realize, shit, I'm looking more at the drummer than at the guitar player. And having some sort of identity crisis like what that happens today. Like, shit, I'm looking more at the biology and I seem less excited about the physics here. What's going on? What's wrong with me? I should be looking there and not here.
Well, I mean, you're a seeker. So isn't that what they do?
Yeah.
For me, it's no surprise. But also no surprise because when you were, I'm actually fitting the puzzle pieces together in terms of time frame in your life. But when you got into really, when you got into a passion of studying physics, you said it was overwhelming, the feeling of spending time to figure out the universe one equation at a time. So you were there when you were
a young academic. Again, when I'm doing something, I'm doing it intensely. So I would come after university classes and I would tell my brother, for instance, today in general relativity, they wrote these equations, and this is like I felt when I was in university and doing my PhD, maybe not so much, but I felt I was being handed in the secrets of the universe on the blackboard, one equation at a time. Then I discovered that's, of course, not the case, but it's wonderful, nevertheless, that mathematics can capture so much about how the world works. Yes, and the same when I was studying the fruit flies and I would dream being one of them. I'm always deep into things, but also kind of quickly moving forward. So it's the both sides of the superpower is that I know I'm not going to be studying something for more than 5 years maybe, because then there's something else that just grows like a plant, maybe like a tree. It's not. Look, what I did in physics served me very well now, and my studies with animals are also kind of a sort of a foundational stone for me now to think about humans, and what I did with behavior and cognition is really helpful now to be able to build another floor, which is how do we study consciousness. So it's a organic whole. But yes, when I was studying fruit flies, I knew I'm not gonna devote 30 years of my life to study the olfactory system of the Drosophila larvae. There's no way I'm gonna do that. I'm sure I'm gonna move to the next thing soon.
So why are you concerned about talking about and studying and questioning evil?
Oh, evil. Oh, I'm evil. Okay. Well, evil. I have a really good life. Life has been very generous and loving with me, meaning I haven't had like childhood traumas or horrible things happen to me, mostly the opposite. So how did I start not just thinking, but entertaining the hardcore reality of evil in the world? Well, it was through ideas, right? From both sides. One was when I started reading and thinking about AI, what artificial intelligence is, beyond ChatGPT and beyond, it's like specifically transhumanism. When I started reading about for me, transhumanism is materialism on steroids when it just wants to destroy the world, or at least our own species. So I started suspecting to understand this whole movement, there has to be a factor that's related to evil. Otherwise, it cannot be just that people are incredibly arrogant and incredibly stupid. There must be something else. So it was through AI, and the other route through which I became interested in evil are these studies on consciousness. I do because the moment you entertain again, maybe not endorse, but entertain the possibility that you're opening to other realms where there are other minds and so on, then you must wonder. Let me put you this metaphor. If you go to the Amazon, let's go to a field trip to the Amazon, yeah! And then you go there with shorts and flip-flops, you're going to be beaten to death and killed probably within 24 hours.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you're dead.
So this could be psychedelics. For instance, we can talk about psychedelics where people say, oh, I see nice jumping elves. Well, how do you know some of those entities aren't really real? And what if you're opening a door and they're coming into your life? That's, for instance, for psychedelics. Or when it comes to people opening their perceptual abilities. And I know you've talked to some of my heroes, right? Well, if you now investigate that, two things. With respect to the subjects that are allegedly able to do that, are there side effects to being open to those realities? Another example would be radioactivity, right? The moment we discover radioactivity and then you start taking, X-rays or imagine you're going to have cancer very soon, right? But you don't know. You just discovered how to do X-rays. So I was concerned about the subject, and I was also concerned about me, because back to the Amazon examples, for many years, I felt each folder of these was a topic, right? And I would do the topics and then I would put them down, I go home. But now I don't feel like what I'm studying are topics that I tackle. I sometimes feel these topics tackle me back, right?
Nice.
So I started being concerned, not obsessed or paranoid, but concerned about what sort of habits, protections, and precautions do I need to take as well? If this world is real, and I think it is, right? But if it's real, if you go to Vietnam, you should wear something for the rain. And if you're now going to the North Pole, bring some jackets, thick jackets. So the same way there when you study consciousness.
Have you found evidence of evil coming into your life?
And I said I'm all in, but maybe that's the only thing I don't want to talk about.
I thought you were all in. I thought you were all in.
I'm all in, but not.
Yeah,
not
I get
now.
it.
Look. I'll just say it elegantly.
Yeah.
I don't need to prove I'm all in because probably I'm not all the time all in. Come on, let's be.
Sure.
I'm Spanish, but I'm not a super torero, So right?
Amazing.
Like, come on.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's good. Like, I'm all in always, and sometimes I'm not.
Yeah,
like Groucho Marx,
I get it.
These are my principles. You see, I go from, that's so funny, and I'm going to talk about the darkest thing.
Sure. Go.
in 5 seconds. I'm just going to mention it, and we can talk about it, but I don't want to give details. I had an encounter, a close encounter in my life with that topic called child abuse. And I thought how ironic that I was then reading about the impossible, and it's like, have that now. How impossibly outrageous and completely. I mean, I can conceive. Look, I make efforts. I make efforts to measure the intangible, think the impossible, and communicate it. 3 things. And I can more or less, you can take metaphysics from here or brain ideas, but when I encounter that in my own family, let's put it this way, it's like, this is impossible. Really? This happens in my own family? And some people pretend it's not happening? And so that was really tough. And then I thought, that has to be evil sneaking in some people's minds and actions. And then I discovered that this is perhaps, look, Luciano, this is perhaps the biggest taboo of all I've encountered so far. I said consciousness is maybe taboo sometimes, anomalous experiences are taboo, what happens after we die is taboo, aliens is taboo. Child sexual abuse is the biggest taboo and the most intolerable of all.
100%. We had, again, as a note to address that, we had on the podcast a fireball of a lady, Emmeline Villar. She's in the Philippines, constitutional lawyer. And she educated us on the Philippines, as a wonderful place as it is also the world's largest source for child sex trafficking. And she was one of the first, if not the first, who enacted or helped enable laws to help protect children in that country.
Yeah, well, let me add something on that. Yeah, really thank you to that lady. But for the listeners or viewers, please don't think, oh yeah, it's right there, far away in the Philippines.
No.
It is in your fucking family, most likely. Or much more likely than you could ever imagine. And then I started talking to people. The same thing like NDEs. Maybe I should write a book about this next, you see? But when you start saying it, and believe me, I haven't said this quite lightly to many people, then some people tell you back what probably happened to them.
Yeah.
And then you discover that really terribly dark world. And then you realize that sometimes, that's why I say it's impossible. Sometimes mothers shut up when they see this happening to their own kids by their father. I'm not making shit up. These things happen. And so that's why I felt it was kind of conceptually impossible for me to understand and totally heartbreaking that human beings are able to do that. And we are able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, wow, you are right. That went like to a very dark place very fast. But the light, if I can say that, the light in this is the sharing. Because once you share, it's inevitable. I mean, we heard this from you. It's inevitable. Once you share, you get a share back. Once you tackle, you get tackled back, and that opens up more, and that's a force. That's the communion. So the sharing is a force.
The only way to, or maybe not the only way, I don't want to be so categorical about it, but a main way to dispel evil is to acknowledge it exists and it's there. If on top of that you speak about it, it has less places to hide. So it's a lot. Because this is not a fixable problem. I don't see how we can fix this. I mean, probably this has happened throughout mankind and, right? It's not about fixing it. It's, could you at least, I mean, again, I don't want to say things that betray anything personal because it involves other people, but I also talked to other people that had, how to say, that were deeply involved in this situation, and I could see in them too an irrational unwillingness to even entertain that could have happened when they had evidence that it had, right? And so if only we could just flip that back and say, yes, there's no way we can understand how that's even possible, but it happened. I think that would just erase 50% of evil on the face of the earth.
Yeah. Again, this could be a bad metaphor. Like the way you describe it makes me feel, it makes me think about regarding evil as an infection. It's like infections, you can make them go away with antibiotics, but the possibility of being infected is real for everybody all the time. Like any kind of infection, whether it's topical or internal or mental or spiritual.
Yes.
I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Wow. Alex is good. Wide range of topics. This has been a lot of fun.
I want to come back to language. Because you mentioned language, cool. and I think it's very interesting because in physics, we're taught, because Galileo said so and it works so well, that nature is that book whose language is mathematics. So if you learn mathematics, you can hear the secrets that nature will whisper. Actually, she won't whisper, because then Francis Bacon said you should torture her and pursue her through all her corners until she spits her secrets, right? So that's also what grandfather said. He basically said rape nature, and that's the way to get the secrets. But if you know maths, yeah, it's like a segue. If you get maths, it will speak back to you. That's for physicists. Like biologists, mostly they don't know mathematics, but then they think, for instance, that the language of life is in the sequence of DNA. It's another kind of code. Very interesting. For neuroscientists, it's spikes. It's kind of a Morse code. For NDEers, when we come back, it's really hard to describe in words. So I'm also trying to pursue a project where people draw their NDEs as a way to communicate the ineffable, right? Because we can ask them and make, surveys and analyze, but there's something truly ineffable too about those experiences. And two more things to say about language.
Yeah.
I'm working with blind people, right? And you realize that despite being Homo sapiens, like myself, at some point they could be seen, I was thinking about this the other day, they could be seen as a different kind of, and I know the word race is really loaded, let's just say another species, because their perceptual and world, their sense of meaning, it's so different just because they don't use their eyes. And even when they describe how synesthetic they can be, or how, for instance, when it's raining, they can perceive a landscape because of the droplets hitting differently on the roof of the car or the leaves. They now have this opportunity. Like, you realize they are kind of aliens to ourselves. So it's like we're surrounded by aliens. Like, kids are aliens, and blind people, if you're a sighted people, are aliens. And if you're a physicist and you're with a biologist, and if you've seen the light at the end of the tunnel, you say there was a tunnel, and then people, and then you draw it, and it's kind of but it's not really a tunnel. And I was talking to a person who's really fluent with Kabbalah, and he told me something fantastic I want to share here. He said, because I asked him, look, I have no clue about Kabbalah, but I'm marveled at the idea that these Hebrew letters are both numbers and letters. And Kabbalistas, Kabbalah people are all about, here we have the word, and then but if you take this letter, it means that, and actually there's a symmetry in the very way it's written, and that also means something. It's like, and I was thinking, what an incredible algorithm to uncrypt and unzip and decrypt nature, right? So language, I'm trying to say, language is not just you and I talking. It's the infinite number of ways we have of just extracting from a truly this hyper object that reality is. Very different things. And so I now often feel myself like, who's the actress in the movie The Arrival? When they go to the spaceship, and she's kind of drawing shit, trying to see. I think my work as a scientist so often feels like this, like I'm there, let me do it. Like I'm there and I'm like, okay.
You're showing better skills than I have.
Right? And it's fascinating. Like, even a holographic, it's like so much is encrypted everywhere. And you can use math, you can use poetry, you can use dance, you can talk to a kid, you can talk to a blind person, you can talk to someone who's from a shaman. And from that same bit, they will unzip a whole different reality.
There's lots to think about there. I've only been reminded about a conversation we had with Rudy Shield that I mentioned earlier. Again, astrophysicist, but his expertise was black holes. On the podcast, he explained to us that black holes, he sees them as nature's hard drive, and that artists or horse whisperers or mediums or people who experience NDEs have experienced or have thinner veils to the black hole. They can access that information much easier. And this is coming from a scientist.
All right. Well, we should give it more credence.
I know, it's a big... Yeah, right.
Well, look, with this friend, recent colleague, he's called Mario Saban, very well known in Argentina. He's written many books about Kabbalah. And I started a collaboration with him. And we have been actually talking about the infinite and the ways in which the infinite sneaks into our universe. And, I don't want to get into that, but black holes is a very interesting possibility, because Kabbalah speaks about other universes that are not material, and yet they're there, and they're there like even as an onion again, and through singularities. Singularities could be one way through which the infinite comes into our world. Another is at the very small. I don't know if you know that, but in quantum physics, they discovered like that the vacuum is probably not empty at all. That's both uncontroversial and very mysterious. And so they had to invent these mathematical techniques to what they call renormalize the infinites, which is basically you're doing all these calculations and there are infinites everywhere. It's like, I want my result to be 3.4 or 5.7, not infinite 0.4, because we cannot do anything with that. So they had, sounds like conspiracy theory, but my physicist fellows had to put an infinite number of infinites under the carpet at the very small and also at the very big when we speak about black holes. And so I'm discussing these kinds of ideas as to, probably the vacuum or the void, el vacío that we say in Spanish, it's not empty, no está vacío. And so your remark about black holes reminded me of that.
Amazing. I wish I had the scientific heft to continue that kind of conversation with you, but I'm just here to listen.
I'm glad, because I'm not sure I can say many more things.
Oh, okay, right. You're being
That's
modest.
not my expertise either, really. But I would go there if needed.
I want to be obviously respectful for the time you've given us here. I have just one more question that we used to ask a lot. I'm going to ask it of you. What is
greatness?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Oh, you've practiced it? You practiced the answer?
No, I forgot. It's like, shit, you told me you sometimes ask these. It's like, I haven't prepared an answer. What is greatness? No? Okay, look, let me answer with the Hermetic principle. As above, so below, and all of that. Well, he didn't say and all of that. It's more serious. It's as above, so below. I think, maybe behind greatness, there's true smallness. I don't know if that serves as an answer. And back to black holes and quantum physics, probably what's very, very great and very, very big is connected to what's very, very small and apparently irrelevant. Maybe to add a poetic note, now that let me go back to these emails. I was cataloging them this morning, because there are many of them. And the smallness of a random person. Hello, my name is Maria and I'm 68. And when I was 7, this happened to me and only my mother knew about it. She's dead now and I want to share with you. That smallness to me, it's much greater than, do you know that I recently published a paper in Science magazine? You see?
I appreciate the perspective you brought here, Alex. That's an answer. Your response is something I'm going to think about today. The smallness. That's very, very cool. Very cool. I appreciate the time. Appreciate the
what a
the
ride.
back and forth.
What a ride.
Yeah.
And how, let me say, I don't know if you can include this, of course, you can include everything. How remarkable this has been before you pressed record. Because I usually jump. People should know that if they don't, that you can cut it. But people typically write and they want you to be on their podcast for content production's sake. And I get it, and it's good, and it's a good business for everyone.
Sure.
But I've done hundreds of hours of YouTube stuff and media stuff, be it TV and radio, and you're the only person, and I was the only person who took the time and the care and the patience to join me on several occasions and learn about me and my life. And it's so remarkable. I haven't seen anyone do that. And I'm not sure if the product ends up transmitting that, but I know you now in a way I never knew any of my previous hosts, because you do it like that, and it's remarkable. Thank you.
Very kind of you. It's just what we do. It's my philosophy in life. I'm curious about people, and that's it. That's just what it is. But thank you. Very kind.
Thank you.